Research Break on KXLM, your leading source of research news in the Twin Cities. With Emily Wilson, Jenna Washneski, Trudy Saxelby, and Willow Rogers.
Good evening, and welcome to tonight's edition of Research Break. In breaking news, the promising new oral therapy for MS, cladribine, is facing a pesky roadblock on its way to market. EMD Serono received a refuse to file letter from the FDA for its application requesting approval of the experimental treatment for relapsing MS. This action usually means the application has been deemed incomplete. Once the revised application is accepted, a decision on approval could take 6 to 10 months. Now, let's turn to Emily for tonight's top story.
Thank you, Jenna. 2 new studies strongly support the idea that neuromyelitis optica, a disease closely related to multiple sclerosis, is an autoimmune disease that targets one or more specific proteins in the brain. These studies out of the University of Colorado and Medical University of Vienna provide a rationale for new treatment approaches, which could also have implications for MS. For a closer look at these studies, I sat down with Dr. Susie McGee, an expert in neuromyelitis optica. Let's take a look. Hello, Dr. McGee. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. You are most welcome.
To start things off, why don't you explain a little bit about what neuromyelitis optica, or NMO, actually is, and how does this relate to people with MS?
Absolutely. NMO, also known as Deviek's disease, is a disorder that until recently was considered a variant of MS, but now we know it's actually its own disease. In both MS and NMO, the nerve-protecting fiber is destroyed by an immune system attack. For both of these diseases, antibodies have been thought to play a role, but we haven't been entirely sure. However, with these new studies, the role of antibodies in NMO appears to be fairly certain.
Okay, interesting. So tell me more about the role of these antibodies in NMO.
Sure. Well, for a little bit of background, antibodies are proteins made by the body's immune system, and these antibodies are trained to recognize specific parts of cells, bind to them, and this sets off an immune response. We had a breakthrough in understanding the role of a specific antibody in NMO back in 2005. A study conducted right here in Minnesota at the Mayo Clinic identified an antibody found in 70 to 75% of people with NMO. So 70 to 75% of people had this antibody. So with that discovery, doctors were able to test for the antibody to help diagnose MNO.
Oh.
Or NMO, either one. What happens with this particular antibody is that it attaches itself to a tiny protein called aquaporin 4. So it attaches itself to this and flags it for destruction. And now this is a problem because aquaporin regulates the flow of astrocytes in the brain. And these astrocytes are important because they really help to support other cells in the brain and the spinal cord. So although this antibody was identified several years ago, it hasn't been quite clear whether it played a direct role in NMO. However, these 2 studies, they offer some significant evidence that it does in fact play a critical role.
Wow, how about that? So what does this really mean for people with NMO, and what about for people with MS?
Well, first, these studies strengthen the argument that NMO is an immune-mediated autoimmune disease. With these studies, NMO is now the only autoimmune demyelinating disease for which we are almost positive we know the target, which is aquaporin 4. Knowing this target is key. This opens up possibilities for treating demyelinating diseases by focusing on that specific target. This type of treatment approach would mean stopping the disease process without subjecting patients to immune suppression, which can lead to complications like PML and cancer and things like that.
Yeah.
So since MS is also demyelinating and is believed to be autoimmune in nature, this could mean better MS treatments in the future as well.
Wow, that just sounds exciting.
It is exciting.
So tell me this, where do we go from here?
Good question, Emily. To follow up on this work, The MS Society recently launched a new study to identify other antibodies in people with NMO and explore whether any of these antibodies can play a role in MS.
Wow, well, it sounds like the MS Society is really working hard to get to the bottom of this one.
Always.
Well, thanks again for joining us, Dr. McGee.
My pleasure.
Jenna, back to you.
Thank you, Emily, for sharing those exciting new studies with us.
No problem, Jenna. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. That wraps up tonight's edition of
Research Break.